So if you read the book of Numbers and you look at chapter 5, verse 11 to 31, there's this strange passage there. And it's often referenced to as the test of the unfaithful wife or the test of the bitter waters. And this passage has been cited numerous times as a possible endorsement for abortion in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible. Now, before we get into whether or not this is about abortion, we would first need to ask, does the Bible specifically say one way or another whether abortion is allowed? The Old Testament has 613 different commandments as part of its moral and civil law code, and nowhere in those 613 laws does it say anything about abortion. So they did not have any prohibition on the practice. If they did, they didn't think it was important enough to include in their law code. And the New Testament, rather, also does not say anything about abortion. It has no prohibition on it at all. And abortions were actually quite common in the ancient world, and usually they were conducted through chemical means. You would mix up a concoction that would contain some sort of toxin. The woman would drink it, and it would cause a miscarriage. This was quite common. And these things were not considered out of the ordinary at all. So in Numbers 5:11 to 31, we have this curious passage that talks about causing a miscarriage. And the passage goes something like this. If a man suspects that his wife has been unfaithful and she's pregnant, and it actually says that he has no proof of this, there's no witnesses or anything. She's pregnant and he just has a suspicion. That's literally all that is required. She is then taken to the priest along with a little food offering, and this is sort of like payment to the priest for conducting this service. And once she is there, the priests are to mix up some concoction. They are to add a small amount of dust from the tabernacle floor to this concoction. They are to then write a curse on a scroll and pour water over it and let that run into this little cup full of whatever it is they just made. They say a prayer. She's placed in front of the altar or before Yahweh, as the text reads. And after they invoke Yahweh, she then has to drink this concoction. If she is guilty, then it should cause a miscarriage. If she's innocent, then the curse will pass through her harmlessly. And in that context, it seems very clear this is talking about an abortion. But I think there's a little more going on than just what we read. And this is just my own personal speculation. So it is clear that this is talking about an abortion. It says that it will cause her womb to wither or it will cause a miscarriage. So that part is pretty self-explanatory. But the adding of the dust or the ashes to it, different translations have different words. Some say dust, some say ashes. But adding this to it may mean something else. And what I think it means is, I think this is a sort of a trial by ordeal. And one example of this would be like in the Salem witch trials. You would take a person accused of being a witch and you would tie them up and throw them in a freezing lake. And depending on whether or not they survived or not would determine their guilt. And I think this is supposed to be something similar. You make this drug that is supposed to cause a miscarriage, and you're going to give it to this person, but you don't want it to always cause a miscarriage. You want Yahweh to intervene if the woman is innocent. you're basically invoking Yahweh to cause divine intervention if she's worthy. And that's why they're taking this dust or ash from the tabernacle where they provide these burnt offerings to Yahweh. And that's why they bring her into the temple and place her in front of the altar, in front of Yahweh. And what I think might be happening here, and again, don't try to look this up because you won't find anything on it, it's just my own speculation. But what I think might be happening here is that the dust or the ash, mixing that with the abortifactant may be reducing the effectiveness of the drug. In cases of accidental poisoning, one emergency procedure that people will use to prevent injury or death from ingestion of a toxin is to eat large amounts of charcoal, because carbon is extremely porous and can absorb a lot of the toxins that are now in the stomach and allow it to pass harmlessly through the body. And so if you have this drug that has been blended up by the priest and given to this woman to cause a miscarriage, but then you take ashes from the altar where these burnt offerings have been made, the carbon in there could potentially reduce the effectiveness of the abortifactant. And so instead of it being 95% effective in causing a miscarriage, it may drop that significantly lower, maybe even as much as 50%. And if that's the case, then whether a woman has a miscarriage or not after consuming this may seem more like flipping a coin, and they can then write it off as divine intervention and possibly not even realize that what they have done is simply sabotage their own attempts at proving this woman guilty. And so that may be what we're looking at here. We're definitely seeing instructions for an abortion. That much is clear. Now, one last thing. We do know that while the Jews didn't have any prohibition on abortion, early Christians did. But we don't have anything in the New Testament as a scriptural basis for it. However, there is a passage in the latter half of the first book of Enoch that sort of prohibits abortion. So if you're looking for a scriptural basis for Christians to not practice abortion, which we know that they were against it, we just don't exactly know why, that could be it. They could have been basing their beliefs off of this, I believe, 2nd century apocryphal writing called First Enoch, which does, in one place, prohibit abortion, and I just can't think of the exact chapter or verse at this moment.